Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel, and this is a missing persons, extensive missing persons segment for us, and we're going to highlight 4 cases, read some letters, and talk about some news. You know, one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is chronic wasting disease. Now, some of you may just walk away from the camera now and not care. It is the greatest wildlife disaster the U.S. has ever encumbered. And I don't say that lightly. Well, in American Hunter magazine in August of this year, they had an article. It said, why Senate's consideration of a $70 million bill combating chronic wasting disease is vital. With chronic wasting disease in 30 states, the bill would fund disease research and management. 70 million won't even do anything. Nothing. First of all, research has been going on into chronic wasting disease for 60 years, and they've really gotten nowhere. A $70 million bill is just a drop in the bucket. It's good they're acknowledging it, but the problem is it's out of control. The worst state for chronic wasting disease is Wyoming. This week I got a letter from some hunters in Wyoming that are going to go there this year, and that is the last place in North America I would hunt because the disease is so widespread in all the counties. If you Google chronic wasting disease USGS map, you'll see a US map of the dispersion of CWD. And it started at the far southwestern corner of Wyoming, far northern quarter of Colorado. It disappeared, got loose from a facility in Fort Collins, Colorado. And it is a protein-based disease, very hard to control. It spreads very easily. And every animal that catches it, which is a cervid, it will kill. And I know iced tea. And I know it's if people understand that moose, elk, deer, mink, they all die when they get it. And really, there is no way to prevent it right now. There is no vaccine or inoculation. And I suppose that's what they're shooting for. But a lot more research has to be done. The article is online. You can read it. And I encourage you to become informed. It doesn't really tell you much more than what I told you. Now, I gotta love this. When people decide that they're gonna try to blackmail people or commit fraud against people, trying to impersonate themselves as me, that is disgusting. So this was forwarded by somebody who saw this online. So they're using my logo, Can-Am Missing Project, and they're announcing themselves as C-O-N-A-M, not Can-Am, Con-Am Missing Project. And this is what they're going by. Let's talk. I got something big to introduce. It's all fraud. The site is a fraud. This person is a fraud. And I want you to become aware of it and spread the word online if you see them. It's disgusting. I have nothing to do with them. And this is our new world, folks. As strange as it is, people unwilling to make a name for themselves, people unwilling to work hard and find something that intrigues them, so they're going to ride the pigtails and ride on the backs of others who have. It's sad, but this happens to me every week. And I'll try to inform you as I go along when you guys inform me, because I really don't spend much time online reading stuff that other people post other than on my own site. So we have some pretty good letters in here, and away we go. I was watching your episode last week with Jim Myers, and my ears perked up when I heard that his store and museum was in Bailey, Colorado. I'm in Larkspur for a few weeks, and that's just over the mountain from me. So my wife and I went there today. We met Daphne, his wife, but unfortunately didn't see Jim. I did, however, buy one of your books, Tribal Bigfoot, and a couple bumper stickers. I'll attach a photo. Thank you for having him on your program. On another note, I first heard of you and your books on the History Channel program, then watched Missing 411 The Hunted on Prime. As a hunter myself, this really got to me. Then I found your YouTube channel, and I've been watching every week for the past few months. I had no idea this has been going on for so long. At first I thought of predators, both four-legged and human, were responsible for these missing people. But of course, there are no guns, boots, or other equipment. So then I thought of aliens coming and grabbing and tagging people and then releasing them back, which as a human scientist would do to other critters. And then in this instance, some people accidentally die, possibly from being dropped back to Earth too roughly and breaking bones and being administered something like GHB to keep them sedated during the procedure, which unfortunately doesn't wear off in time, and the person dies of exposure because they can't get to shelter whilst paralyzed. As you said, sometimes children are found near a path, asleep or just awake, just waking up. Maybe they were left there to be found and the GHB is wearing off. I don't know. Then the whole idea of Sasquatch. Maybe they use infrasound to hypnotize prey. Prey in this instance being someone injured or some other defect that a high predator would consider good to cull the herd. Stole that line from the title of a book. Again, I don't know, but the times people are witnessed to just run into the night, never to be seen again. That disturbs me the most. It disturbs all of us. It reminds me of parasites that infect a creature and makes them perform actions that are fatal to the life form, but beneficial to the parasite life cycle. And then the article about the people having spontaneous memory lapses and taking other jobs for years until they regain their minds again. Wow. I know it's all related, like electrons orbiting the nucleus. We see the electrons, but what is hidden in this nucleus? Anyway, thank you for your time. You remind me of my father, about 20 years younger. It's the way you explain things and the way you hold your eyes. Maybe because my father was a police officer for 40 years, or maybe because he's originally from Montana, I don't know. He says Glacier National Park is the most beautiful place in the world. Your dad's right. You keep doing what you do and stay strong. I'm very sorry about your son. My stepson died in a car wreck the day after he got his license, only 2 miles from home. He was only 15. I know this is not the same as your son, but I do have a degree in understanding. That was in 2004, and we think of him every day. We still cry all the time. Someone told us you never get over it. You only get through it. God bless you and your family. Thank you. I don't see how you could ever get over losing a son or daughter. Whatever the reason. Losing a child is just disastrous, and I hear from all of you out there. And to think that we are losing somebody every 8 to 10 minutes in the US because of fentanyl. And I guarantee there's going to be relatives to the people that are watching this that are going to die in the next couple of years from fentanyl. And our government is doing a disastrous job controlling it. Next letter. Hey Dave, I'm sorry I don't have a WhatsApp. I'm not real computer savvy. I did read the ingredients in my mini Aussie's puppy food, and yeah, the first ingredient was whole grain corn, and the third was corn gluten meal. And the rest of the ingredients didn't sound very good either. I've just always gone with Purina puppy chow. God. However, these days I'm learning a lot through you. Excellent. That's what this is for, an exchange of information among smart people. However, Please feel free to email me back and let me know what you found for Huck. Just have to tell you, she's so beautiful. I lost my service dog of 13 and a half years last October, and I just got my Jasper at the end of March. I was so lost and all alone without my best friend. Now I have my new best friend. That will help. So on this Huck deal, as far as dog food, Angie is really smart along these lines. And we've tried out 2 or 3 different types of food, trying to find the right blend, no corn, and we're looking for other things. And when we find it, I'll definitely let you know. But I will tell you that what we're doing now is we're taking chicken and boiling it and chopping it up real small and putting it in with the kibble to give extra protein as she's so young. And it's a little bit of an expensive route to go, but hey, if I don't eat one more meal a day, I'll be okay. On a different note, I just want to thank you so much for speaking up about suicide. My 24-year-old son also watches your videos, and he got a hold of me 2 weeks ago and told me that he's been having suicidal thoughts for a couple of months now. Because of what we both have learned through you, he's in the process of getting help. Thank God. Thank you. I don't know what I would do if I lost another child. I lost my firstborn when she was just 4.5 years old. That was the most devastating thing I've ever gone through. It's been 42 years now, and God alone has helped me through it. I pray for your comfort and a sense of peace through your loss of Ben. With all that you speak about Ben, sounds like he was an amazing young man. Well, I will close for now, and I'll look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you for all you do. I would definitely pay to continue to watch your very informative videos. Thank you. You know, I always wonder, you talk about these things, and am I really helping anybody? And a letter like that gives me fuel to keep going. And to hear that there's people out there that are listening to my struggle, and it is a struggle for a multitude of reasons. My struggle, Angie's struggle, because we see the people around us struggling. We see couples struggling with arguments. And then I've told you before that the valley I live in has a propensity for suicide of young people. And it doesn't make sense. And it's a horrific side note to a beautiful location. Okay, next letter. I'm a longtime fan and listener. I've read your books and find the whole missing phenomena to be very interesting. I live in central North Carolina, and I've hiked all over North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. I've not had any odd occurrences myself, except for a few involving other humans, which are just mundane but basic criminal incidents. No mystery there, and those are not the subject of my message. Instead, I'm writing to share an experience well known to my family, a so-called portent of approaching death. In the mid-70s, I was about 8 or 9 years old. We lived in a rural neighborhood in North Carolina. Our homes were spaced along the road, extending outward from a textile mill where almost all of our parents worked. The nearest actual town was about 30 minutes drive. I guess we were a classic Carolina mill village, whatever you want to call us. We were a tight little knit community. This closeness is how we came to share this portent of death experience with our neighbors. An elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Galloway, lived next door. They were retired, and all their family lived far away in Minnesota. To me as a child, this seemed about as far away as the moon. I'm not sure how they came to our neighbors, to be our neighbors. Kids don't think to ask those questions. She made cookies and he passed out candy. That was enough for us kids to know. Sounds like a good mixture when you're young. Throughout my life, Mr. Galloway suffered from increasingly worse health. By the time of this story, Mr. Galloway was essentially either in bed or sitting in his chair in the living room. Being so young, I did not, and still do not, know exactly what was making him ill. I suppose it was none of my kid business. However, myself and other neighborhood kids and adults helped the elder Galloways often. We mowed their yard, washed their cars, chopped their wood, brought groceries from town, did minor repairs. So it was no surprise when Mrs. Galloway came knocking. Well, before I go into that, those small acts of kindness, going to do something for a family that is going through a crisis, and when the male part of the equation is normally doing the heavy lifting in the household, neighbor steps in and helps. That's something monumental. I think that's something we all need to do occasionally. Because you know why? We'll all be there someday. Miss Galloway came knocking about 8 p.m. one winter's night. She said she had seen a scorpion in her kitchen. It actually ran at her and then went under the stove. Now, we do not have scorpions in North Carolina, so my dad assumed it must have been a big spider or maybe even a crawfish, which are small freshwater living lobster-looking things that do appear at times in central North Carolina. Mrs. Galloway said this was a shiny navy bluish color and moved so fast it was almost a blur. She could only make out details when it stopped and would lurch at her. She said it was at least 6 inches long. That's a big arachnid. Dad and I went back with Mrs. Galloway to her house. I was hoping to see this thing. If not a scorpion, maybe it was a snake, which would have been even cooler for me to see. We looked around the kitchen, ran a broom under the stove, and even moved the refrigerator. Nothing. We looked around the living room and dining room, crawling around with a flashlight, looking in corners. Nothing. So we wished Mrs. Galloway good night and went back home. Within a half an hour, Mrs. Galloway was back at our house. The scorpion was now under Mr. Galloway's chair, with him sitting in it. And strangely, it was spinning itself in quick little circles. Mrs. Galloway was in a panic, so my dad and I went back over to their house. My mom called on our Harvest Gold Bell South wall phone the other neighbors who had been helping over the years. Those men and several other boys my age soon joined us at the Galloway home. Mr. Galloway was calm. He had not seen anything. He was dismissive of the whole ordeal. We were interrupting something on TV. Still, at Mrs. Galloway's urging, the men helped Mrs. Galloway or Mr. Galloway to his bed. Then we, as a group, with Mrs. Galloway, moved every piece of furniture looking for the scorpion or whatever it was. We scared up several small spiders and one very frightened mouse, but nothing that Mrs. Galloway recognized as a bluish scorpion, which she had seen twice. What could it be? If it moved like a blur, that means it was hauling. We even looked under the bed and other furniture in Mr. Galloway's bedroom. Nothing. My mom and another mom offered to stay with Mrs. Galloway for the night. My parents even offered me up as an on-call bug killer under the supervision of my mom. This was very exciting to me, as it had the potential to keep me out of school the next day. However, Mrs. Galloway and a now grumpy Mr. Galloway sent us all home. The rest of the night was quiet. I woke the next morning to crying in our kitchen. Mrs. Galloway was there with my mom and dad. Mr. Galloway was dead. Our other neighbors began joining us in the kitchen. Someone had been over to verify the death. It was true. The police and county coroner were on their way to do the official stuff. Mrs. Galloway said that when she went to check in on her husband, he was already cold. He had passed peacefully in his sleep. She said the scorpion flashed by her and out into her yard as she opened the door to come into our house. She never saw it again. None of us had ever seen it at all. The adults packed us kids off to school, and that was it. By the evening, Mrs. Galloway's grown daughters had begun arriving at the family's home, and the neighborhood boys were interested in their fancy cars. It's just how kids are. In later days, my mom and grandmother would often come back to that scorpion event in conversations. Grandma believed that the scorpion to be a bad omen, a portent of death. She said it was common in the old days to see strange things in the hours leading up to a loved one's death. Crows, lizards, strange cats, owls. Yes, owls. I've heard that before. All were known to Grandma as a foreshadowing of death in the past. The Galloway scorpion events became a household legend for us. And here I am now, 40 years later, still thinking about that shiny navy blue scorpion. I never saw it, but somehow I'll claim the life of my neighbor and strange legendary in my life. There are some strange things mixed into our world. I'm interested in your thoughts and the experience and omens in general. Thank you for your time. I wish I had some insight into this, but I've heard similar stories before. Never scorpions, but the other things you mentioned, crows, owls. I don't know. There might be something to it. Hey, dear Dave, next letter. I absolutely adore you and your show and greatly appreciate your immense care, love, and concern for our country, humanity, and nature. You have been and are by far the most sincere and honest human on the internet. You've shared so much and continue to take this hits like a heavyweight champion without backing down. Know that we are appreciating you and know that you're on the right track. So, I want you to know that I have some really smart people that help me, way smarter than me. And they've told me all along that YouTube is censoring me, and not in the traditional sense. They do it in other ways. Even though you may be a subscriber, you aren't notified when a new video comes up. And just in the last month, I've seen a series of you respond to my posts saying, I was never even notified, Dave. I haven't been notified in weeks. It's a form of censorship. It's a way to keep my numbers down, a way to keep my revenue down. It's a way to keep people from viewing. It's a way for us to not communicate. And it's going on. Same thing goes on Twitter all the time. And it's gotten worse just in the last couple weeks. When Elon Musk went on to Twitter and said he was going to buy it, the doors came down. All of a sudden, I gained thousands of new subscribers in a matter of weeks. Then, boom, door closes. I haven't had an upgrade in my numbers on Twitter in weeks. Not normal. Not normal. So, moving on. Something happened this week that made me think that this is all supposed to be happening. All these disappearances and strangeness. Now, it doesn't make it right, and it's certainly not a good thing, but I'm convinced that we have done this to ourselves and are not to know the origins or the hive of this evil. There's no denying the facts you uncover. What you report on is completely authentic, but I believe this is a natural progression of human civilization on Earth. The darkness has existed through the ages. We are born with original sin, and I believe this is all part of the good versus evil love story. And there is by far too much evil. Greed, hatred, jealousy, anger, corruption. It is universally around. Stop there for a second. If you don't see this, then you really need to start opening your eyes and your agenda and what you watch and what you follow. There is a lot of evil in our world right now. There's tons. Just be aware of that. It is universally around. There is nowhere on earth where evil does not exist. Can we stop it? Yes, I believe through prayer. God said, ask and ye shall receive, and I believe him. But when we as a whole don't acknowledge or specifically ask for his peace, this evil inevitably continues. There are all kinds of mysteries in multiple realms of existence, and I believe the truth will unfold through time when the right time arrives. Just like Judgment Day or in the end of days. It is not for us to know when or where, outside of what the Bible tells us in Megiddo, Israel. But I do believe by rejecting the rules of how God wants us to live, I do believe that we have caused this and continue to aggravate the situation. This evil and strangeness is not the fruits of love and goodness. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you do. I continue to be a villager. Your YouTube channel is the only thing I watch. Peace. No matter what, remember that you, as you are enough for Jesus. So at any time you wish to take a break from this, know that you are not letting us down. You have done much more than your share for your fellow man. I'm humbled. Thank you. Many of you have known I don't push an agenda on you. I don't push my religious beliefs on you. And I don't push Ben's religious beliefs on you. Everybody has to come to that on their own. I really believe that. And whatever that path may be, I hope you find it. There is a strange sense of peace when you get there. That's all I'm going to say. No, I'm not demeaning anyone who's an atheist. I don't demean anyone who's a Buddhist. I don't demean anyone on their religious beliefs. And I just let it be. But if you look at the state of our United States, let's say, and the people who claim to be highly religious political leaders, and you look at their stances on issues, it really makes me question the reality of that belief system. Just saying. New letter. Hey Dave, my dad passed away a few months ago at the age of 80 after a long struggle with his health. It's been long enough since his actual passing that I find myself reaching for the phone to call him, tell him about something that happened. That is brutal. I find myself doing that with Ben. I told you before that he was my go-to guy to talk to things, highly intellectual things. I don't have that. I get it. I totally get what you're saying. And tell him about something that happened, almost an involuntary action, before catching myself a millisecond later. I miss him and I think about him every day. Thank you for the time you have spent on your channel sharing your thoughts and coping with loss, as well as the perspectives of the village on this subject. It has been a source of comfort. I'd like to share a story with my youth that involved my dad and my brother just outside Alabama, Coushatta tribal lands located in East Texas in the town of Midway. Around 1988, following an uneventful camping event and doing target practice on my family's property, we started the drive down 2 miles to dirt road to make it back out to the highway that would take us to Houston. About halfway from our property, we noticed a large, brilliant diamond-shaped object hovering motionless above the thick pines that are found in the area. Typically, at the conclusion of a weekend camping trip, my father had a lead foot traveling home, but the sight of the object in the sky caused him to pull over and bring our 66 Ford to a stop. We all jumped out and just started staring at this anomalous object for a few minutes before my dad decided to get the 30-30 out and looked at it through the magnification of his rifle scope. The now magnified object never made a sound, never moved, never changed intensity, just hung there shining above the tree line like a huge Christmas ornament. In retrospect, I'm thankful any possible occupants of the object didn't interpret our use of the rifle scope as hostile. About half an hour after staring at us, the novelty of it wearing off, Dad says, "Well, boys, I guess we can say we saw a UFO," and we drove home. A few years later, I was watching a TV show on UFO encounters that featured what had come to be known as the Cash Landrum incident in Dayton, Texas, about a half hour south of our sighting. This involved a similarly described diamond-shaped craft appearing above the tree line, which began following a car of 2 elderly ladies and a grandson. All 3 subsequently developed skin lesions, hair loss, and other symptoms consistent with exposure to ionizing radiation. I would encourage your listeners to find the full account of the story, as it's quite fascinating. It is a good story, and it's filled with facts. Your commentary on the radiation levels and unexplained injuries at Skinwalker Ranch reminded me of this account. I can't help but wonder if there is a correlation. Oh yeah. Thanks for your dedication to the subject and your Sergeant Joe Friday approach, just the facts, when it comes to sharing what you have uncovered. You're welcome. Thank you for your kind letter. Very much appreciated. Next letter. A little about myself. I'm a career airport firefighter in Burlington, Vermont. Former Army armor crewman, Air Force Security Forces firefighter. I retired from the military in 2019, 24 years of service. Sir, thank you for your service to our country. And that troubles me. It troubles me a lot because the Army has just stated that they are not meeting their goals of recruiting. Doesn't surprise me. People join the Army to protect the U.S., to be strong soldiers. If they have to kill somebody, they'll go kill them in defense of our nation. And what the Army is putting out front these days to soldiers is not what they enlisted for. And we need to get the Army back on track. Just wanted to say thank you for providing something worth watching and thought-inspiring. With all the garbage on TV and internet these days, it's great to see channels like yours and ISDALs begin to take flight and gain popularity. I take particular interest in your stories as I am an avid hunter. I'll be going out to Wyoming. Oh no. Oh no. Pick another spot this year for elk and mule deer. I usually hunt in the Targhee National Forest and Grays River National Forest. I've been hunting out there since 2006. I missed last year as I was too fed up with the mask mandates and the stupidity of the airlines and their tyrannical rules. I had planned to drive this year but can't afford Chairman Biden's fuel prices. If you happen to be in the Alpine, Wyoming area between September 24th and October 5th, feel free to hit me up. Love to have you as a guest at our home there. I will be with my father and my brother. My father was a retired electrical engineer from IBM. He also served in the Navy under Admiral Rickover as a designer of nuclear reactors for submarines. Smart man. My brother is a veteran as well, 22 years of service in the Air Force and currently a career assistant advisor for soldiers and airmen in the National Guard. Hope you're having a great summer and having fun with Huck. Oh yeah, we're having fun with Huck. Last place on earth I would hunt is Wyoming. Just the facts. Wyoming is filled with animals that have CWD. Do not eat an elk, deer, moose, whatever you kill that's a cervid in Wyoming without first getting it tested. Don't. Please don't. Thanks for the letter. Next letter. Hey Dave, I just wanted to encourage you by saying, as a frequent watcher of your channel, that your efforts to educate and inform everyone who cares to be educated and informed about what goes on in our world beyond your own lives, all you do is selflessly gracious and much appreciated by 99.9% of us who watch. Yeah, I appreciate the nice comments. I get a series of comments from people who seem as though that they thrive on trashing others. I don't get it. And then they embarrass themselves because they say things that they can't support with facts. I don't get that either. You mentioned Jim Myers as a close friend who was and is there when you need brotherly friendship and support. Jim has always been there, and I will be there for him. You're extremely blessed to have people like that in your life, Dave. They are few and far between. Quote, there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Proverbs 18:24. Know that there are those of us gaining a great education by watching. We are praying for your continued protection and peace. So, One other really close friend I've had since 10, 12 years ago, I've talked to you about him before, is Harvey Pratt. Harvey, Native American elder from Oklahoma, Cheyenne Arapaho, Native American chief, 40 years with the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, one of the smartest, most spiritual men I've known, and a guy who cares. We always end the call, I love you. I'm blessed to have Harvey in my life. I'm blessed to have Jim in my life. Next letter. There's Huck out there making noise again. Hey Dave, someone inside Wikipedia has recently managed to get publications like the Skeptical Inquirer, Skeptoid, and other debunker rags under Wikipedia's list of reliable sources. You probably already know these magazines have extreme bias towards anything they judge paranormal. When Wikipedia let those biased journals in, they opened the door for Wikipedia editors to use those magazines as sources. Using the falsehoods from these articles, Wikipedia editors can discredit, cancel, and demean anyone, especially those who deal with anything remotely paranormal. If you, David, have ever so much as mentioned the word conspiracy in a book, film, magazine, anywhere in print, these editors will make it their whole life. It's how Wikipedia turned Missing 411 into the Missing 411 conspiracy. Stop there. Conspiracy theory. Have I ever proposed a theory? No. They're blatantly lying. And this is what they do. They get people who don't know that Wikipedia is a fraudulent organization that says lies about many, many people, and there's no oversight from a neutral body. I'll go on. One article in Skeptical Inquirer said that every time a hiker goes missing, David Paulides calls it a missing 411 case. That's a blatant lie. But because it came from a, quote, reliable source, unquote, it can be added to your biography as if it's true. Again, you guys know it's not true. Another blatant lie by Wikipedia. In a separate email, I'll send you some screenshots of the nasty discussions among Wikipedia editors. In the past, I saw that at least 10 people tried to get misprints and fallacies removed from your biography. You have some good friends out there, Dave. There's 3 or 4 Wikipedia editors who hover over your biography using insidious logic to twist truth into lies. Now the lies are being disseminated out to Twitter, Facebook, etc. These people appear to derive mean-spirited thrills from the activity. I'm sorry to be so negative. We say we'd like you to take out the word conspiracy. These editors say, no, we have a reliable source, so we can keep it in. See how they work? Yeah. To refute all of the lies and distorted entries, we would have to prove many negatives. As far as I can tell, Anarchist and Roxy the dog are the main ones watching over your bio to make sure all the negative stuff doesn't get deleted. Well, it may take me years. It may take me years. But if I ever find out who those individuals are that are lying, blatantly lying about me, and when you're a public figure, they can lie. But they can't lie to the extreme. They're going to pay a heavy price for defending themselves because I'm going to go after them like no tomorrow. Wikipedia has special instructions on how to handle the biography of a living person. But if you have a reliable source, you don't have to follow those guidelines. Well, isn't that special? As Dana Garvey would say. Your biography was given protected status because it was being repeatedly vandalized, end of quotes. Translated, that means that the people who are trying to change your biography into something that resembles the truth are immediately shot down by vigilant editors who preserve the lies. Our only recourse is to find something that says your work is not a conspiracy, that you don't call every hiker a missing person, that proving the existence of Bigfoot is not what you're primarily known for. That's only the first paragraph of lies. When you protest, they say that Wikipedia is made up of volunteers and there's no central authority. There's so much more. I think, however, I'll send this information later. Best wishes. I used to stay up nights worried about this crap. And I don't do it so much anymore. But, unfortunately, there are idiots out there in the production world that read this and have canceled me as a possible expert in some areas of missing people because they read that I am related to Bigfoot, or I am making everything related to Bigfoot, or that's a central theme in my life. It's all lies. But certain people that really don't know how evil, and we'll get to that word again, Wikipedia really is. It's a really good example right there. I appreciated the research into that. I knew most of that, but I didn't know some of it. To know that there's a couple of people hovering over that to ensure nothing changes, evil. And maybe someday, someone in that Wikipedia world will see how wrong it is to not tell the truth, but just to lie to get somebody out of the public realm. What can I say? So, 4 cases of missing people today. And the first one, a man named Martin Johnson, 40 years old, disappeared August 12th, 1913. Now don't leave because this is an old case, because I have 3 very new cases coming up. So, and don't skim by this because this is an important one. He was working as a logger. Other people would say woodcutter, north of Manhattan, Nevada, at a place called Bald Mountain. So, let me show you the map here. This is Lake Tahoe. This is the California-Nevada border. I spent a lot of time in this area. There's some huge mountains, 14,000 foot mountains in this area. And they're rough and rugged. This is as you get into the desert. And then the green area is where there are woods. Bald Mountain, the area around it, had a lot of wood products, especially back in the early 1900s. So there you go. That's the map where this was happening. Now, he was originally from California, and he found a job with a company called J.S. Kelly. And he was employed there since June 21st. This incident happened August 12th, 1913. He was described as super stable, hard worker, very motivated. And the Kelly company had 2 camps set up on the bottom of Bald Mountain. And they were about a mile apart. Martin was in one camp by himself, and then there was a handful of other guys at the other camp. So one employee on the night of August 11th, late afternoon, came to his camp, and Martin took him up to a ridge where he was going to do some work the following day and wanted to get an opinion on what he thought of the timber in that area. And they walked the area, and then this man left, went back to his camp, presuming Martin was going to his camp. Well, when they split up, the next day, J.S. Kelly came into Martin's camp at about 10 a.m. And he noticed that nobody made breakfast that morning. The campfire was cold. Everything was in camp but what Martin was wearing the previous day. Suspicious. So, with breakfast not being made, he realized that Martin never got back from meeting the other employee. Called the U.S. Forest Service supervisor, a man named R.G. Steele, who organized a search. And right away, newspapers of the time called it a very mysterious disappearance. Because Martin knew this area, he had worked it for a couple months. No way to get lost, in their opinion. Searchers went on for 2 weeks. So, the one thing that really struck out to me on this case was point of separation. Something happened after the two men separated on that ridge. But what? Martin was never found, and the case will probably never be talked about again if it wasn't for me. Now, what's unusual about that is the location. That center area of Nevada has no disappearances on their cluster map. This is a new case we found, which is strange. With the desert around the area, with Bald Mountain nearby, with the town a couple, 3 miles away, should have been found. Should have been found. Okay, the next case. I'm going to put a preface on this right away. I'm not saying that all of these cases I'm giving you are 411 cases. And you're going to see why right away. But I'm telling you these for a specific reason. John Davis went missing October 24th, 2021. 4 miles east of mile marker 8 on Highway 162, east of Covello, California, Northern California. This is a missing persons poster. John, 48 years old, on October 24th, he and his son were camping on the Eel River, and they woke up to the river rising in a torrential storm. His son went straight to the vehicle, and John said that he would relocate the tent, move it up from the river. Well, hours later, his son came back looking for his dad. With a picture of John. Came back looking for his dad and the family dog that was with dad, and noticed that his dad was gone, the tent was gone, all the supplies were gone, and the dog was gone. His son called his mom, who called search and rescue. And a 5-day search and rescue over land started. Well, here's a map for you. So this is Covello over here. The area east where they were camping, and then I'm going to let you read right there, that spot. And this is in the general area where they were in. Interesting, eh? Well, they spent a good solid week looking at all the land all over, and they couldn't find John. They didn't find anything. His tent, supplies. Then they flew a helicopter on the river, and they figured, well, the tent will be in the river, and that should be pretty obvious. And other things floating, sleeping bags, pads that you sleep on would float. They didn't see anything. Well, on November 23rd, they did an aerial search, and they thought they saw some things. They went back out and searched, and they didn't find anything that was related to the disappearance. Well, on December 1st, the family and private searchers went out into that area looking. And this is important, folks. Pay attention. They were shot at. Now, the area of Covello is famous for marijuana, illegal grows, and meth labs. That area of Northern California gets really remote, and the people get real wicked. Do not ever go into private property searching for anyone or anything until you get permission of the owner. So the dog belonging to John and his son did return in 2 days. They tried to get the dog to go out with them again. Not interested. So where would the dog have gone? How did he go? Their focus was on the river, and it seems as though the sheriff had given up searches on land. It's an unusual case. I've only known of one other time where a search and rescue person was shot at and hit in the Central Sierras years ago. But when searchers get shot at, that's serious stuff. Now, as a searcher, you should always be wearing bright orange, bright green, fluorescent green. You don't want to look like you're trying to hide from anybody. You want to make it blatantly obvious who you are. And people up there, if they have an illegal marijuana grow, they don't want thieves coming around stealing. That's the reason behind that. So, John Davis, again, missing October 24th, 2021, east of Covello, California. Torrential storm, disappears, dog disappears, canine related. They brought in a bunch of dogs, didn't find anything. So, next case. Again, Northern California. This time, more the interior part. Let's call it Mount Shasta. Terry Knight, 66 years old, lived in McCloud, a place I've been many times. This is the search and rescue bulletin that was released by the sheriff's office on Terry. Very much in shape, rode his bike, his mountain bike, everywhere. Had a heart condition, remember that. Well, on June 22nd of this year, 2022, Terry liked to ride his mountain bike out into the forest near McCloud and set up new mountain bike trails. If you've never been there, it's a rough area. Lots of timber is down. So you got to spend your day cutting up timber to make a trail. Slow process. And he left and told his wife he was going to cut some new forestry trails, and that was part of his hobby. Well, he didn't return. And his wife called the sheriff. And right away, they found a CCTV photo of Terry riding down the street near where he lived. So, this is Mount Shasta right here. It's about 2.5 miles from McCloud to Mud Creek. This is where he was seen, in McCloud, where he lived. And then about 2.5 air miles to where they found his bike and his clothes. That's correct. His bike and his clothes. Well, Siskiyou County Sheriffs didn't waste any time. They put 12 canine teams into that area. They put a CHP helicopter with FLIR. They put 2 mountain bike teams in that area. And a 10-day effort found nothing besides the bike and the clothing. It was a brutal area to search. There are other missing people in that region that I have done right here on this channel where there's 300 videos. Now with this one, there's a lot of unknowns to the story. First of all, why would Terry travel far from his bike and his clothes? One of the articles said, well, it's pretty common that people who work on trails strip their clothes. Okay, I can understand taking off your shirt when you get hot and you're working in the wilderness, yeah. But they didn't explain all of the clothes they found. They also didn't explain if they found all of his tools that he brought with him to make the trail. There was no explanation on his mental health, but they said he had a heart condition. I don't know. Canines didn't pick up a scent. Missing clothing found. Disposed of his bike found. And it's been a month. Terry Knight hasn't been found. Questionable 411 case. And I don't like to make assumptions on these cases that are fairly new, because all the facts aren't out yet. That's why I wait many times to see what's going to transpire on a case. Now in this instance, you have 3 very recent cases in this video. Now, one of the great places I was very fortunate to travel to when I was young was McCloud, where Terry lived. And the McCloud River is a pristine, gorgeous river. Back in my day, I had great fishing. And my dad and I would hike all over that area and fish all different places. And I'll tell you, there's a little town not far from McCloud called Dunsmuir, Dunsmuir. The town is on the Sacramento River, another great fishing river. And we'd stay in Dunsmuir and then drive around the area and fish different places. Always caught fish. And oftentimes we'd make it a multi-family event. So we'd go with my uncle and aunt and their kids and we'd spend a week up there. A lot of fun. It gets really hot. So we'd be fishing sometimes half in the river, half in the creek, and good times. Next disappearance. A female, Janet James, 47 years old, missing from North Sydney, Australia. She recently moved from an area in southwest Sydney. And she was found July 14th, 2022 at 12:40 in the afternoon. A local rugby team was on a hike as a team with their coach on a fire trail in a place called Cliff Oval in northern Sydney. And they came across the body on the fire trail. Sydney police treated it like a homicide from the very start. In the area just before finding the body, there were torrential rains that hit the area. When police got there and looked at the body, they noticed that the clothes on Janet's body were on backwards. It may have been one reason why they were starting to handle it as a homicide. Now, just recently, within the last couple days, they released the cause of death as misadventure. Friends in Australia, you deserve more than that. Misadventure is a very generic term. It means death by something unnatural and an accident. It really tells you nothing. None of the reports issued or released the time of death or the date of death. No specific cause of death. Exposure, physical injury, animal predation. So it was originally treated as a homicide, and then the police backed off and they said it was misadventure. Friends, how many times you put your clothes on in a lifetime? You know where the front of your shirt and front of your pants are at? You know where your zipper's located? People know how to put clothes on, even in the dark. Coroner also stated there were scratches all over the body. Now, you can get scratches in the forest by moving laterally through the woods or vertically through the trees. My point exactly. You got to think with an open mind here. Because of my experience with MUFON, being an investigator for a long time and seeing many cases over the years, many abductees have reported that when they get returned, their clothes are on backwards. Apparently because the entities don't know the front from the back on our clothes. They just put them on and send you back. Is that what happened here? Janet lived with a roommate. The roommate said she was acting erratically just before she disappeared. There's very few details about when she disappeared, how long she'd been missing, and the circumstances leading up to the disappearance. Very few. And that's suspicious to me. And what would cause veteran homicide detectives to call a case a homicide to the press, and then days later reverse course and just call it misadventure. If I was an investigator in a case like that, I wouldn't make any statements until I knew for sure. This is Sydney Harbor. And this is the oval, Cliff Oval, where she was found. It's on the verge of some wildland up in the north. A beautiful region that I've been to that. Gets wild very quickly. And people in Sydney had made comments that the area she disappeared in was a pretty common area to go hiking. What I'd like to know is, how long would the body have been there and not be seen? And how could it be missed? And then how could it suddenly show up? I don't know. But it sounds suspicious to me. Misadventure as a cause of death is not doing you in Australia any good at all. So I'd be mad. I'd be asking for the police for more information. And you know who that falls on? Falls on you, the press. Now, most of you, I would say 90% of you or 95% are totally worthless. You don't ask the hard questions. You're not investigative reporters. It's an embarrassment. And by going out and writing a story and not asking any tough questions, you're not helping anybody. You're being a stooge. You're playing a game with the public. I won't do that with you. If I know something, you're going to hear it. And as I stated today about chronic wasting disease, I think it's a huge, huge issue. The biggest issue for wildlife in North America. Just the facts. So, that's our show for today. 4 missing persons cases. 2 from California. 1 from Nevada, where I've never reported before, in the middle of the state. And 1 in Australia. I have made several videos on scene in Australia. And if you go back and you look at the videos near the beginning of my time doing this, you're going to see that we reported on several missing persons cases in that area. And we interviewed some people there that were quite interesting. So please just go back in time and you'll find them. So anyhow, thanks for being here. I was out today and a very elderly lady was coming out of the store, and I rushed to get in front of her and I held the door open. This lady turned and looked at me with this puzzling look and said, "Why, that was very kind." I said, "I'm glad to do it." She said, "Well, thank you," and she walked away. And you know what? I know I made a good impression on that woman. As we should do, each of us, every day if we can. It's a small gesture, folks. Be a friendly soul. Do something nice. Huck isn't barking, so that means she must be with Angie out there, behaving herself. Thankfully. Have a great summer. Paulides out.